Psalm 16, and I pray that this is going to be a genuine encouragement for us this morning. Before we dive into the text, though, I have a question for you. And the question is this: what do you trust? What do you trust? Or maybe it could be personalized. Who do you trust? And you say, what do you mean by trust? That's a word that's out there. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Let me give you an example of what I mean, and maybe it'll help you understand what I'm asking. So this week, Lowe actually went to go keep grandchildren. And we have identical twin girls. They are 14 months old now. They are walking and babbling and just coming alive. But if any of you have remembered experiences with children, they hit a certain stage where the separation from mom and dad is pretty great. And anybody else who comes in, including grandparents, is a little bit hesitant to give yourself to them. If they get left with you, they may cry. Or as we experienced, especially me, when you walk in the room, they cry. Like, what are you doing here? You're a threat. I don't trust you. But they're 14 months old now, and Lowe went this Wednesday, I think it was, to look after them. And one of the twins, Gwendolyn, actually, when Lowe walked in the door, saw her, threw her head back and threw her arms out and went to her. Now look, if you're a grandparent, you know what that moment's like. It's amazing. There came a point for Gwen where she trusted Lalu, her grandmother. So with that in mind, I'll ask you again, what do you trust? Who do you trust? Trust, by definition, is this. It's a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Now, maybe I can help, because we are in church, and Sunday school answers abound when I ask, who do you trust? So let me put it this way instead. How would our culture, or how would your work associates and peers at school answer that question? Where do the people around you place their trust? My hunch is there's a number of options out there. Some people trust in finances. If I can build a big enough nest egg or have enough resource or be ready to prepare for my old age, then I'll trust that money. Some of us, actually, we don't have money, and have never had money, and maybe we don't understand how to trust that, but we have skills, or we have a sharp wit. I trust my own ability, either in my career or my trade, or maybe what I'll trust is my skills and my wit when it comes to my social interactions. Oh, I can make it happen by the way in which I engage you, and I can win you over, and I can survive because of that. Or perhaps you have certain persons that their whole trust is, I've got a family network that's going to take care of me. Or I've got a posse of friends that I can trust them. They are there, they're going to help me, they're going to take care of me. Or maybe you're the independent type and you're just saying, you know what? My hard work, my personal grit is going to get me through. I can trust that.
I have something to say.
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
Whether you have money or not, the ultimate goal is to trust Jesus.
Well,
No matter what.
so I need to let you come preach the sermon, because you are all over where we're going to go today.
Yeah.
But you know this, that's a truth, as Karen said, that ultimately we trust Jesus. That's a truth, but when you look at the world around us, is that where they're placing trust? And when we're honest with our own selves, are there not times when we struggle with that truth? It's interesting. We live in a culture right now that struggles with trust in anything. I came across a statistic It's election season, so we'll throw this out. It's the American National Election Survey. It's been conducted since 1964. You know that's a long time ago. That's the year I was born, so that's old. In 1964, they asked a basic question of people. This is an American survey. They said, can most people be trusted? They would ask the person, can most people be trusted? Or can you never be too careful in dealing with people? So when they asked that question in 1964, the percentage of people who answered in the affirmative, yeah, most people can be trusted, was 55%. As they did that every 2 years, every election cycle, from 1964, there was a gradual decline. There was a weird bump in 2000 and 2002. The levels of trust, yeah, most people can be trusted, went back up to the 1964 levels. And why that happens, I'm not sure, but it does. However, by 2008, when they were asking the question, the response of people who said most people could be trusted was under 30%. Now, they changed the method of questioning at that point and gave like a 5-point all the time, some of the time, you know how they do those things. So it's a little harder to statistically measure that against the questions that were asked earlier. But the people who look at it can see it's pretty much stayed at that under 30% with possibly a slight decline. So in a world where trust is degrading, what are we left with? We're left with only trusting myself. And if I trust myself, it leads to narcissism. Basically, I'm out for me. It leads to the manipulation and abuse of others in order to get for me and take care of me, look after number one. It actually, though, ends up leading to despair because though you trust yourself, you let yourself down, don't you? And many times, for many people who end up in that place where the only thing I can trust is me, there's a retreat from life, there's a despondency, and oftentimes it leads to, I'll take my life. It's not worth living. Here's the reality of the world in which we live. There's a lot of truth claims out there of what it is you can and should trust. All those things we listed before of finance and skills and family, and those things are crying out to you. If you'll do this, then you'll be safe. If you'll do this, I'll take care. Every one of them is in making their truth claim, calling for you to place your trust. You hear it from diet plans, you hear it from medical treatments that are prescribed for you, and then ultimately you hear it with regards to faith for your eternal destiny or for your flourishing in this life right now. If you do this, if you trust what I'm saying, if you take this truth, you'll be okay. So I'll ask again, what do you trust? Who do you trust? And maybe after all of that conversation I've had so far, can you trust? Are you willing to trust? I think an overarching statement that might capture where we're going to go today is this: truth claims call for trust placed. Truth claims call for trust placed. That adage is then going to be followed up with a second adage that I would propose, that trust well placed produces security and joy. Psalm 16 is going to be a bold declaration of trust in the Lord that is a response to the truth claim that has been presented to the psalmist, David. He's already encountered in things that we've looked at in the Psalm so far. In Psalm 1, he's encountered, here's the way. It's in the Torah, the law, the rule, the way. If you will delight in that, then you will be blessed. You've been presented with a truth claim. That's followed up in Psalm 2 with another truth claim that says, this one who's saying, follow my way, is also the anointed one, who reigns over all sovereignly. He is the Messiah, and if you take refuge in him, you'll be safe, you'll be blessed. Psalm 16 follows that as a response of trust to the one who is trustworthy. So David's going to develop that confident cry, that trust, or truth claim that the Lord is God and can be trusted, calls for me to place my trust in him. He's going to follow that up in this way in the psalm. It's going to follow 3 steps. The number 1 step is this. There'll be a trust statement with a request in verses 1 through 2. It's going to then follow up in verses 3 through 6 with the qualities of what the trusting servant is. And then the psalm will end in verses 7 through 11 with a description and what the blessings are of being under the trustworthy Lord. So a trust statement, a trusting servant, and a trustworthy Lord. Let's look at the psalm. A little background before we go verse by verse. You'll notice in the superscript, it says, a miktam of David. What in the world is a miktam? Well, actually, we don't know. How to translate that word is a little bit iffy. It's probably a musical term. It's closely resembling other words in the original language that would say covering, but here are some clues we have. This is one of 6 miktams in the Psalter. The other 5 are all in book number 2, which is Psalms 56 through 60. Every one of those psalms has a superscript that gives a background to what's going on in David's life. One of them is when he's seized in Gath. One of them is also when his house is being watched by Saul to have him murdered when he comes out. One of them is when he's battling enemies abroad, and he ends up saying, we've been deserted in the song. One of them is when he's hiding in a cave. And one of them doesn't really give us the details of the circumstance. It only says, do not destroy. Are you getting the idea behind what the theme seems here? David is at a point in these particular types of psalms where it is reflected in this song. He's actually one who has been driven out from the heritage and the promises that he had in the Lord. If you're a Jew in 1000 BC, David's time, and I said this is your heritage in the Lord, where would your mind go? What are you automatically assuming it is? Well, for them, it's a promised land. For them, it is a land that was promised. It was apportioned out. Your tribe was given a section of land. Your family was given a portion of land within that. And this would be the place that you possessed by birthright. Yet, David declares in some of those scenarios that we laid out earlier in miktams, in Psalms that are a miktam, he declares to Saul in 1 Samuel 26 of himself this. He says, they have driven me out this day, that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord. And they've said, go and serve other gods. Do you catch the world that David is living in here? Not just the world around him, but the world within him. Everything that was promised feels gone, stripped away, unable to get a hold of or be a part of. So David, without the comforts of place and without rest from conflict, pens the words of Psalm 16, and it is so insightful as to what actual heritage is. In the text, look there in verses 1 and 2, where we're going to see a trust statement with a request. In these two verses, he's going to move and progress in this way. He's going to make a request, he's going to give a reason for the request, and then he's going to state his resolution. What is his request? His request is what? Preserve me. The word actually means to hedge about. It would be the kind of idea that was actually conveyed back in Genesis when God told Adam, when he made him in the garden, to keep the garden, to work and keep the garden, preserve it. It's the same word that's used a little later, all the way in Genesis 4, in a negative context, where he comes to Cain and he asks Cain, where's your brother? And how does Cain reply? Am I my brother's keeper? Is it my job to hedge him around? Is it my job to preserve him? This is the idea. This is what David is asking the Lord to do. Preserve me. Protect me, like God. So, okay, fine. I could go and ask Josie, would you please preserve me? I need to have a good reason for saying that, though, don't I? So why is it that David would ask the Lord here, preserve me? He gives it in the second half of verse number 1. He's asking God to preserve him because he's chosen to take refuge in the Lord. Do you catch the back and forth? Lord, you preserve me, and the reason I'm trusting that is because I'm taking refuge in you. It's the same word that's used back in chapter 2, the Psalm 2, verse 12, where it speaks of cosmic realities, that there's kings and nations that have rebelled against the Lord, and the Lord laughs, and he says, I've set my anointed on the throne on my holy hill. And if you want protection, you need to take refuge in that Holy One. It's cosmic, and David's bringing that cosmic reality down to his own personal reality. Lord, you said if I'll take refuge in you, I'll be blessed. I'm taking refuge in you. So I'm asking you, preserve me, keep me. He follows this with a resolution, a truth statement placed. That resolution is this: you are my Lord. You'll notice the word Lord there. Is it all caps or is it lowercase? It's lowercase. And that's because it interprets a word that's not the covenant name of God, Yahweh. That's all caps. But this is a word Adonai, which means you are my sovereign, you are my authority, you are my king. It's a sense of I'm your servant and you are over me. It's David making this statement. I believe all that you have said about the Holy One who will be set on the holy hill. I believe it. And I personally now give myself to it. And in making this bold and decisive statement, decision, he follows that up with, as Lewis said earlier, I have no good apart from you. In other words, I'm placing all of my welfare at your disposal, Lord. You've made promises, you've stated truths about who you are and what you'll do, and I am at a place right now to say, I'm yours. I trust you. Please preserve me. And if you don't, I have no good. My welfare here is at stake. I don't know that we capture it now with our idea of wedding vows because of the ease of divorce. But if you want a similar type thought process, it's like this. When you take your wedding vows, what is it that you actually say? That renouncing all others, I give myself wholly to you. It's a massive statement of trust, is it not? I'm in my 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, and I'm entrusting the rest of my life to a life with you. For better or for worse. Well, that's what David's doing here. He's essentially saying, my welfare is cast, Lord, upon your trustworthiness. I submit myself to you. I trust you to preserve me, not just in theory, but in my current moment. So this statement of trust, of welfare, it is beautiful in and of itself. We could just read those first two verses and walk away and like, this is amazing. A total abandonment of my welfare to the trustworthy one. But in the psalm, it's just the start. The psalm is going to flow from this statement of trust into a description of the trusting servant in verses 3 through 6. You see, to trust in this way has implications, and it has indicators for the life that's lived after the statement of trust. These 4 verses are going to lay out a couple of things. It's going to impact who my associates are. It's going to impact what my worship is in the negative, what it's not. And it's also going to impact my portion. So following this confident call of, Lord, you are my Lord, David states this. It moves from just I am confident to a call to others who are like-minded to be confident as well. Verse 3, he says, as for the saints in the land, saints being holy or set-apart ones, in the Old Testament generally used for like angelic beings, but here it's obviously not. It's saints in the land. It's those who are under the covenant promises of God, given the land. As for the saints in the land, it says they are the excellent ones. What is excellent ones? It implies a servant, one underneath, who serves as a noble. I think other translations actually use the noble ones. A chieftain, a co-regent. I'm going to serve with and under this Lord to whom I've submitted. So he says, all of you saints in the land, you are the holy ones, you're my delight. So implications, David takes delight in the persons who value and take pleasure in the same things that he does. People of like values, others who love the Lord, have entrusted themselves to the Lord, who have said, Lord, you are my Lord, and I'm begging you, preserve me too. These are ones that David says, I enjoy being with you. I resonate with you. We have a kindred spirit. And he assures these ones in verse 4 with what worship is going to look like for us. There's an assurance that trust is well placed and that the truth claims are going to come to pass. Now consider again David's scenario. Remember, it feels like he's lost this, but he's going to say here one more time in verse 4, the sorrows of those who run after another God shall multiply. Those who run after or those who acquire another God, their sorrows are going to multiply. It's the same wording that's used in Genesis 3:16 after the fall, and the Lord looks at Eve and says, in childbirth, your sorrows will multiply. So wait, time out. What David is promising here to his cohorts who also trust in the Lord is that you can rest assured that these persons, sorrow is coming to them. How does that jive with other sections in the Psalms that I read where David makes claims of the fact that this is not working out so great? Let me give you an example. In Psalm 73, David says this, truly God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. He makes the statement of, you're good. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps nearly slipped, for I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Do you hear the inverse of what he just stated? The sorrows of these people is going to multiply. But he's saying, when I look at their life, their prosperity is just there. He says they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They are not in trouble as others are. They are not stricken like the rest of mankind. Lord, I don't understand. What is this juxtaposition of your saying this will end up poorly for those who go after other gods? When I look at their actual life and it seems like everything's working out great for them. It's me that's hiding in the cave. What David is doing here is reminding himself not just of the temporary moment, but of the cosmic ultimate realities. He's reminding himself of what the Lord has revealed back in Psalm 2, where he said, the nations say, we're going to throw God off. And from heaven, the Lord laughs and says, ultimately, their teeth will be broken. They'll come to an end. Don't follow them. You need to serve the Lord in fear and rejoice trembling. He's the right one to follow because ultimately the promises will be fulfilled in the Anointed One. So David, seeking cover, he's seeking refuge in the Lord for his welfare and for his associates, also does so for his worship. You see it there at the end of that verse. He says, their drink offerings of blood, I'm not going to pour out. I'm not taking their names. Look, it's popular to go and follow these ways. Money, and for us, it might not be some wooden statue. But everything the culture's chasing, are you not tempted to chase? I'll get security if I just go ahead and capitulate and do that. Play the game. And David's saying, I'm not doing that. I'm not going there. I will not give my worship in that place and in that way. Instead, he's resolved to not sacrifice to their gods, to not give credence to them. And it culminates in verses 5 through 6 in this statement about the trusting servant. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. Chosen. The word could probably better be interpreted or translated appointed. Lord, you're the one you've given to me, appointed to me, that you are my heritage. You are my lot. You are my inheritance. You're the ultimate place. And it ties that with the language of lines they're drawn for me in pleasant places. All that imagery of what it is to have a property, where you have property lines and boundaries and inheritance. And he's saying, lay aside the physical land and give me you. Give me you. You now become the place where I find life, where my work has meaning, where production is real, where harvest is actually experienced, where I have family. So can you see what happens? David is shifting his sights from a land in Bethlehem where he kept sheep to the Lord, who's with him in the cave, who's with him on the run, who's with him in the foreign land, and says, this is the one that's my portion. This is the one that's my inheritance. You, Lord. So I just want to pause for a second and ask this question of myself and of you. What do you see as the greatest gift of your Christian life? I'm not talking about a life outside. I'm talking about of your Christian life. Let me ask a few prodding questions there. Is it the fellowship? Do you see the greatest gift being like-minded brothers and sisters? Or do you see it perhaps as the weekly rhythms of gathering? Is the greatest thing you think of in your Christian life this coming to church as a corporate group on Sunday morning? Is it gathering in a community group? Is it being in a D group somewhere? Maybe your thoughts go to, if I think of the greatest gift, it's, man, I get to go to heaven. Or maybe more practically, I don't have to go to hell. I get to avoid those judgments. Or, God bless us, I have an aunt who just passed away this week in the Lord. Is your idea of the greatest gift of my Christian life is that I have the hope of seeing loved ones one day. How many times have you gone to a funeral and everybody says, oh, I bet they're seeing, like for my aunt, my mom right now. Now, are all these things I just mentioned bad? Corporate gatherings, the fellowship we have, the hope of heaven. Is that bad? Absolutely not. Those are great things, but the true gift, the ultimate recognition is that in Christ, I get Christ. I get God. Let me read a little section out of a book that's entitled, God is the Gospel. The author says this: the Bible teaches that the best and final gift of God's love is the enjoyment of God's beauty. Psalm 27 says, one thing have I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. The best and final gift of the gospel is that we gain Christ. Philippians 3, I count everything as lost because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish in order that I may gain Christ. David is chased. He's hunted. He's waiting while he stays submissive to the Lord and obedient. And there's only one reason that in that horrible scenario where the guy who's been deposed in God's eyes is trying to pin him to the wall, the one reason he can continue to be submissive and obedient is because he knows in the end, I get God. Lord, you're my portion. You're my Lord. He wouldn't even understand that if it hadn't been for the revelation of who God is and what he does, his way that we saw in Psalm 1. It would not be possible if it wasn't for the anointed one who comes and crushes the enemy so that we who take refuge in him have an actual place that trust is worthwhile. So we've seen in the Psalm so far a trust statement with request. We then have seen what it looks like to Hebrew poetry is really helpful in that it doesn't just make a statement, it actually makes parallel statements. And when you hear it in two ways, it kind of helps you understand more. It's like if you just said, I am happy, okay, what does that mean? But if you say, I'm happy, I'm overjoyed, you say it multiple ways, it gives it new depth. Well, look at verse 7. He says there, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. The Lord, and he gets counsel. But then it's followed up with a statement that says, my heart, in the night, my heart instructs. Wait, is that opposite? I thought you said the Lord gives counsel and you're saying at night, my heart instructs. What is this referencing? What is it talking about? Again, I know you're probably tired of references back to Psalm 1 and 2. But Psalm 1, blessed is the man who doesn't walk in the wrong ways, but where is his delight? It's in the law of the Lord. So the Lord gives counsel. Where does he give counsel? It's in the revelation of himself in his word. It's in the revelation of himself in the anointed one, Jesus. So the Lord is giving counsel, but as verse 2 of chapter 1 says, delight yourself and meditate in it day and night, you literally are in a place where at night your heart will be telling you and reminding you, this is what the word said. This is the way I should go. This is what's right. This is what's helpful. I can think through, how do I treat my wife? How do I respond with my coworker? How do I treat my next door neighbor or my classmate? The culture's telling me one way. A lot of times my heart's telling me a certain way left outside of the instruction of the Lord. But when I've delighted in his word, he guides me. The nature and the character of God, who is my portion, is revealed there and guides my steps. When I go there, the temptation to slander in order to influence favor to come my way is confronted, is it not? When I'm there in his counsel, the temptation to cheat on my homework because it would make it so much easier for me to finish up and be able to play my game or watch my show. It's confronted. The Lord, as mine, guides my choices. Yes, my actions on the outside, but also underneath that, my view of life, my attitudes, and my thoughts. So, this trustworthy Lord guides. What else does this trustworthy Lord do? In verse 8, he gives stability. Look where, again, the poetry, what it does. The Lord is before me. There's a conscience presence. It's not like, well, he's around somewhere. No, he's right there. And not only is he before me, but he's at my right hand. It's what he strengthens me with assistance to do the jobs, the life that I have to do. And the result is, what does it say of me? I am not shaken. When I'm overwhelmed with life, when I'm distraught because of its injustice, what comforts more than knowing that there's an almighty, all-knowing, ever-present ally who is with me and for me? If I know that, I don't have to be shaken. I can move forward with confidence. So guidance, stability. Third thing, and we're not going to take a lot of time on this one, but life secured. These verses 9 and 10, are actually really full and utilized in the New Testament. And in a few weeks, we'll actually have an opportunity to hear some of that. But to the current moment, the fear of death is natural. It's natural because death's an intruder. It's been brought about by Adam's rebellion and by my own rebellion. And as a result, I'm facing this harsh curse of death. And I don't like it. But David's able to say here, my flesh is secure. I'm not abandoned to the Sheol is the grave or the pit. I'm not left to rot and be no more. No. For me, the fear of death due to evil overwhelming or strength too little or wits too slow is gone. My flesh is secure in the Lord. He made it. He gave it breath. He keeps it going this very minute. And I can certainly trust him with how it ends. So he gives guidance. He gives stability. He gives a security of life. And this all leads to verses 10 and 11 are going to point out joy, incredible joy. Look at the words that are chosen, the verbals that are chosen to state this realization, this resolve that the Lord is my portion. What is the result in me? Verse 9, he says, my heart is glad. Verse 9, he says, my whole being rejoices. You go down to verse number 11, and he says, there's fullness of joy. There's pleasures forevermore. Let's tear that apart. Where is the gladness? In verse 9, it's in my heart. It's like the deepest part of me is genuinely glad, not a superficial smile. It's not like I have to go, you've seen those commercials for all the antidepressants where the lady's holding the little stick figure of a smile and she's frowning. This is the face I'm putting forward. This is the opposite. This is what's underneath. No, it's the opposite. This may be hard, but underneath, I am full of gladness. The rejoicing in verse number 9, where is that found? In my whole being. There's nothing held back. What kind of joy do I have in verse number 11? It's full joy. This is a joy that's opposed to just a temporary and short-lived joy that other trusts can give. Let's not fool ourselves. These other trusts can temporarily sometimes give you great satisfaction, but it doesn't last. This joy is full. And then lastly, the pleasures. How long do the pleasures last? Forevermore. His presence and His strength obtained and kept always. So just to wrap it up, there is a truth claim that David's confronting in the psalm. The truth claim is this: I am God, not David. The Lord is God. I, the Lord, have come in Christ, and I have obtained your redemption that you did not deserve and could not obtain on your own. And by faith, I can be yours and you can be mine, restored once again. This is the truth claim. And if you are there, the truth claim says this: it's the best place you could possibly ever be, now and forever. That truth claim is calling for a trust placed from you and me. It's calling, in biblical terms, for us to repent and believe, or trust. Repent. That's to turn away from the other gods, the other truth claims, the other things that are promising you that I'll help you work it out and keep you safe and secure. Turn away from that and turn to the Lord as the Lord. And when you do, place your trust there. Not just abandoning of this, but it's I give myself, I give my life, I give my security for the future and for now to you, Lord Christ. I am yours. I will walk with you wherever that takes me. Because I have seen you as my appointed portion, my inheritance, my great, best gift. Seeing that, placing trust there, allows me to then place the request. Lord, preserve me. Hedge me about. Keep me. I trust you. It can be said more beautifully than I can say it in the words of the psalmist in Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. The Lord is your portion. The Lord is my portion. It's not a difficult call. Who do you trust? What do you trust? My prayer would be that we, like my little 14-year-old granddaughter, Gwendolyn, will see this invitation to that truth claim and throw our head back and hold our arms open and say, come and get me, Lord, take me. I trust you. You know, Gwendolyn doesn't know what Louette's going to do with her. She doesn't know whether Louette's going to go put her in the crib, put her in the play yard, strap her in a car seat for a 15-hour drive. She has no idea what will happen, but she knows who she trusts. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, even today. But I know who we can trust. I know who we can trust. Say with the psalmist, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you.